Hello. Over the past year, the development of AI technologies has increased exponentially, and if it weren't so existentially terrifying, it would be impressive. There are photoreal 60-second videos depicting busy Tokyo streets or epic sci-fi movie trailers. There are generative AI tools in many creative software applications that let you create the world beyond the edge of a photo, or generate imagery whole cloth. You can get an entire story with just a handful of prompts. The demonstrations of its power are quite remarkable, but as we know, with great power comes great responsibility. And sadly, I have no faith at all that the use of AI in creative industries will be good for anybody but corporate shareholders. In fact, I think that rather than enhance the worlds that we love and escape to, it may very well destroy them. I'm Jordan, this is Jordan Sorcery, and today I'm considering the power and the dangers of AI at the tabletop. Okay, so this video is a little bit different for me. I'm hoping that you will indulge me this week. I'm not an expert in AI, but I think I've got a reasonably good grasp of the tabletop industry and gaming history and culture, and it feels like we are rapidly approaching a critical juncture in the use of this technology. This is a complex and nuanced discussion. I don't have all the answers by any means, and I would like everyone to be mindful of that in the comments. But given where we are today, it felt right to at least say something and start a bit more of a discussion about this in the gaming industry. It's a pretty dramatic statement to say that this is a technology that could change everything, but we've seen many examples in the past of exactly that. The wheel, the internet, the Dreamcast, they changed the world forever. And closer to home, Donald Featherstone's war games, Dungeons and Dragons, 40K. They literally changed the game, changed culture, and changed everything that brought us to where we are right now. Now, those games were all inspired by, or influenced by, or trying to emulate things that their creators had seen or done or played before. There are plenty of folk who can't or won't accept that there is any difference between a large language model scraping information from billions of points of data and a human mind or team of human minds working to draw that inspiration from many different things and to craft and change and revise it into something new. For me, this is where the crux of AI-generated art's failure lies. And let's be clear, in this case, I really believe that the writing and the illustrating, the composition, the typesetting, the rules writing, all of that stuff is worthy of the term art. And the failure of AI art in this context is that it's inherently less than the sum of its parts. It's a diminishing circle. AI-generated art requires the training data on which to build, and from that, it can only regurgitate things it's seen. It can't introduce new ideas. Instead of looking outward and being inspired by the universe and everything that's possible, like a human mind can, AI can only look inward to the things that have come before it, and to then, from that, extract something that is a sort of Frankenstein of all of these different things that already exist. And sure, there are portmanteau worlds like Warhammer that is drawn from all of these different influences, but the synthesis of those influences is the creation of something new. It's more than the sum of its parts, because of the human hand at work. AI is just an AI centipede of gruel and slop, feeding on itself and regurgitating things that will then, if they go into the training data, be regurgitated, reconstructed, regurgitated, and reconstructed. I don't want to come across as a chicken little alarmist or a Warhammer-wielding Luddite. I do understand that there are going to be uses for this technology. In the hands of artists, they can be used to improve processes or make things more efficient, or to improve their quality of life generally. They already use AI tools in the generation of fur and grass and stuff like that in Hollywood CGI movies. The YouTube channel Olden Demon has done a great video about how AI could be used to restore and preserve classic Games Workshop art that has almost been lost. There will be uses for this technology in the right way eventually. But before we even get to that, there is a whole mess of red tape around the ethical use of the training data, around the legality of using all of this stuff from the internet for generation of profit, the legality of producing and distributing the images that come out of the back end of these tools, who owns them, who can use them, and how. Is it theft to have stolen all of these training data pieces of art and writing and comments and everything else that hundreds and millions of people have put onto the internet over the last couple of decades without asking them? And I think it is theft to steal that stuff, to take hard-working artists' art, the product of their life's work, and just without recompense, without permission, use it to train something to replicate their style and then leave them with nothing. Those kind of ethical questions, I think, are really, really important, and we are at the moment breezing past them and getting way ahead of ourselves. Some people may say that this is the natural order of things, that with new disruptive technologies, industries are changed forever, that creative destruction means that old jobs die out and new jobs emerge and replace them. And that may well be the case, and it may well be positive for some industries. But when it comes to writing and art, I just cannot agree. And what is worse, I think, is that despite all of these questions of ethics and legality and the future of artists, despite all of that stuff being open and unanswered, some companies are already chancing their arm with the use of AI. Wizards of the Coast have already been caught using AI-generated imagery twice. First in a Dungeons & Dragons sourcebook, Bigby Presents Glory of the Giants, and again in some promotional material for a new Magic the Gathering release. In both cases, Wizards denied using AI, and then later admitted that AI had been used, but apparently by artists without their knowledge. Meanwhile, the fiction publisher Tor Books has been criticised for using AI imagery to create covers for their recent sci-fi thriller and dark academia novels, Fractal Noise and Gothicana. I think this is going to happen more and more. It's quite typical and expected for companies to try and reduce their costs. And one of their biggest costs is always humans, people who do jobs. So there will always be a rush to use new technologies that reduce the amount of humans you need to produce a cover or write a book, because it's cheaper. And if it's cheaper to produce, you can still sell it at the same cost, and you will make more profit. It's inevitable. That's just how corporations and companies work. So I think, unfortunately, we can only expect this to continue. One thing that I think is incredibly interesting is the way in which we normalize this kind of new technology. If you take, for instance, using AI-generated art to create some new art for NPCs that you might want to use in a role-playing game adventure, they are then shared online and other people start to see them and use the same technology themselves. That then normalizes the use of AI at the gaming table. People see their character portraits, they see NPC portraits, they see locations that have all been generated by AI. That gets them more comfortable with companies using that as well. You will then get a move to companies using AI-generated art and then writing for their covers, for their content, and that is where I think we start to move towards less and less value in these products. And if you think about certain creative work, like, say, writing and illustrating Hallmark-style greetings cards, which is quite repetitive by its very nature and relatively simple, that might be the kind of thing that AI ends up doing relatively quickly. But from there, I don't know how long a journey it is to Hallmark-style movies being made entirely with AI, written and generated by AI tools with no human intervention beyond those initial prompts. That might be appealing to some people. To me, it's really not. And others might think that it's not a loss at all. Who cares about ridiculous, silly movies? I personally quite enjoy an absurd, rubbish Christmas movie when the season rolls around. It's just fun. But I understand that not everybody cares. But that is going to be a problem for all of us when it goes from the things we don't care about to the things that we do care about. Besides anything else, those kinds of smaller projects are the sort of thing that people learn their craft on. A lower stakes, lower budget project can be where someone actually learns how to do their job effectively, and then they move on to more prestigious work later on. They are the on-ramp for certain creators in certain industries. And if we remove those things, that means that by the time we need the artists for the really prestigious, high-budget, high-profile work, there's just no pipeline of new creative talent to fill those gaps. And I think that that will be a major problem in the long run. And that's true for these games that we love so much as well. One of the things that has really been brought home to me by the work I do here on the channel is just how much these games were created by people. It might sound ridiculous to say that Warhammer and Dungeons & Dragons and 40k were created by people, because of course they were. But the more that we see these faceless corporations controlling these intellectual properties, the less it feels like there were humans involved at all. There are fewer credits out there for the people who actually craft this stuff, and we don't get to see, as often as we probably should, the actual faces and names and individuals who are responsible for crafting the worlds, illustrating them, writing them, putting them together so that we can enjoy them as much as we should. We ought to be able to see those people and have a human connection with the individuals who are responsible for giving us all of this amazing stuff. I mean, think about it this way. All of these IPs, these games, these worlds started as ideas in someone's head. And they were taken out, they were crafted and created, they were revised and refined, the edges were polished off, and sure, bad ideas or mistakes may have been built in, but they've been turned into something that charms us and that we look nostalgically back on. They've been refined and iterated and evolved by countless individuals working together to create these new games, the things that we play today, and all of their earlier ancestors. These are all crafted by human hands and human minds. And that, I think, is why they are so immersive, so exciting, why we do feel such a pull to these worlds and to these games, because we can just feel the human element within them. Like any good piece of art, they take on something of the character of the person or people that create them, and they then have a dialogue with the viewer or the player. We are constantly interacting and engaging with the games that we play and the books that we read and the art that we look at. There is a relationship there beyond the physical. And I think that that will be lost when we move to an inherently soulless version of these games. If the introduction of AI art on boxes or in books, the introduction of AI-generated text in stories or rules writing, all of that stuff will remove that human element, will remove that dialogue. And more than that, the legacy of all of the creators and their influences, the sculptors and the artists and the writers and the graphic designers and everyone else who has been part of the long lineage, the legacy of all of these games for decades now, that will end the very moment that we introduce AI to the creation of these games. I think that the games will literally die that very moment, and something new may well be created, but it won't be a continuation of those games. It will be something new, and I think something worse. There's no evidence to suggest that, as of right now, Games Workshop or even Wizards of the Coast are currently looking at using AI to write or illustrate their books and their games. But I think that we're in a place right now where industries are starting to look at what AI can do for them. We've just seen that Reddit has signed a new deal to sell all of its data, all of the comments and things uploaded to it, as a training data set for the use in AI. They're changing their terms and conditions for users to reflect that going forward. I think we're going to see more and more of that. And the longer that we go without, for example, Games Workshop crediting more of their artists and their sculptors and their writers, the more danger there is that the facelessness and the human element of these creations is just used in a negative way, in a way that's going to allow the introduction of less human creators and more faceless creators, literal faceless creators, AI creators, into the process of making these games, making these miniatures, and making the art. If I had any influence at all, which I don't think I do, I would be calling today for Games Workshop and Wizards of the Coast and all of the other creators and publishers and games development companies to really pledge not to use AI art or writing or any AI-generated content in their products going forward. Now, that might be something that changes down the line when the ethics are resolved, when the legalities are resolved, when artists are fairly compensated, and when we really understand how and where we should be using this kind of technology. But I think there's so many questions right now that are not answered, that are just not satisfactorily explored, that we should be avoiding using that stuff in the creation of the games that we adore. So that's my request, I suppose. Will companies pledge not to use AI, to make very clear if they have used AI, and to be just transparent with their audiences, with their consumers, so that we can make our own choices about whether or not we want to condone that kind of thing? So just to summarize, I personally, if it's not clear, am against the use of AI art, the use of AI writing in any and all tabletop products. I don't think we're there yet. I think we should be avoiding this. I think it has negative connotations and a negative effect on artists and writers and the games as of today. Maybe that will change in the future. Maybe new things will emerge, new ways of using it, ethical ways of training it. That all might change how I feel about the use of AI, but for now, I just don't think it's a good idea. I hope that this has been an interesting prompt that will help start a healthy and I think much needed debate about the use of AI in the creation of games and whether or not it is appropriate for use at the tabletop. Please share your thoughts on this topic in the comments below. I know it's an emotive topic, but please stay respectful of one another. I think there's a lot that needs to be said here, and I think we ought to be talking about it more, but let's do so in a healthy, respectful way. I recently saw a quote from a 1955 novel called Starbridge. A historian is not just a chronicler of what has been. The fruits of his labours are a series of terms from which the future may be extrapolated. Now, that is probably a bit grandiose for me and the channel, but it inspired me nonetheless, and that's part of why I thought I would do a video about AI. But I will be getting back to history next week, so don't worry, it's going to be business as usual on Jordan Sorcery. Thank you very much for watching. I'm Jordan, and this is Jordan Sorcery. Is this going to become a controversial, opinion-based clickbait channel? Absolutely not. But I do have some thoughts